I have circled a couple of things that I want to be sure that everybody hears. I love what you said about labeling the feelings so that they having the vocabulary for those things so they can find the right solutions, identify the supports, be intentional about setting aside their worry, find two strengths in the weakness that they perceive. This is great, being a buffer, not a fixer. What I'm hearing is I really feel like you're empowering us in our coaching role, not in our fixing role. So if I'm really struggling, that I think I'm going to make it better, I want to make it better, I know how to make it better, I've been there, how can I force myself to be in that coaching role?
That it's so excruciatingly hard, because so often in a nanosecond, we can see exactly what they should be doing in order to avoid a mistake, in order to avoid getting hurt. And I think we just have to do a little bit of self-talk and remind ourselves that the short-term pain has this long-term payoff. And the greater gift is not shielding them from that discomfort from the moment. It's teaching them how to tolerate it, because there is no such thing as a life without pain. There's no such thing as a life without disappointment. And we want to be raising kids who can roll with all of that, who can manage the tougher moments and not let it defeat them, who are optimists. So optimists see problems as temporary and situational, whereas pessimists see things as pervasive and permanent. And we want kids to be seeing setbacks as obstacles to be overcome, not as challenges that can defeat them. And the only way they can do that is if they feel competent to manage them on their own. If we do that work for them, they do not develop that sense of competency.
Dr. Hill, I know you've got a question.
Phyllis, I don't really have a question per se. You answered so much information. Two parts that I really enjoyed was, I know as an adult, I definitely struggle with understanding what I can control and what I cannot control, and having conversations in the coming weeks before we begin next year. I will be talking to my administration about how do we help our students understand that some things are just out of their control. I thought the Venn diagram was a wonderful pictorial for us to try to figure out what it is, because I think that does cause our middle school kids a lot of stress and anxiety that really isn't necessary. And the second part that we really strive in our district to do so much of is, and you touched on this, to find that one trusted adult that you can go to no matter what is going on, that you know you're going to get support and you're going to get caring and you're going to know that they're that person for you. And we try very hard to make sure all of our students through pre-K through 8th grade have an adult in the building that they know they can go to. Middle school, living with it right now, middle school is hard. The world is not what it was when, well, I may be the oldest person on the call, but it's not quite as it was when I was in middle school. It's much harder than it was now. Our children deal with a lot of things that we did not deal with. I think part of growing up is going through some phase of being bullied. That's just kind of how it is. But when I was a child, you could escape it. And now you can't. With social media, there's no escape. So getting kids to understand what they control and what can't they control will hopefully help them realize that it's going to be okay, and you're building resiliency and grit at this point, and you're able to move on, because life, unfortunately, as we all know, sometimes isn't always fair.
Yeah, that's very well said. You've got a question here about how can I help my child name the emotions? And, so many of our speakers talk about that if you don't have the vocabulary, we can't really get to the solutions, be specific about how to solve the problem. So if I'm having trouble, how do I help my child name the emotions?
So, one of the things you can do is really reflect back. And sometimes if you're going to get it wrong, so you might say, it sounds like you're really disappointed, or it sounds like you feel pretty embarrassed. And the great thing about a middle schooler is that even if they weren't sure what they were feeling, they certainly know if you got it wrong, and they like to be the experts in their own life. And so they are going to correct you. And in that process of correcting you, they're going to have that self-discovery. They're going to give you another clue. And so reflecting back what you're seeing, eliciting some kind of a response, even if it's not the desired response, to keep the conversation going. And then you can do the same thing for yourself. You might say something like, let's say you lose control or you're angry and you yell. You might say something like, you know what, I totally just yelled at you and you probably thought I was angry, but you know what I'm realizing? I was scared. I saw you get hurt. And I said, why did you do that? Why did you sit on the scissors or whatever it might be? And I yelled, but that wasn't really that didn't really reflect how I was feeling. And I think that my emotion, I didn't express the emotion I was actually feeling. And so that kind of modeling, especially now what we're seeing with kids is a lot of kids who are anxious or depressed, they have a lot of externalizing behavior. So they're getting in more fights, or they're short-tempered, or they're unable to take any criticism whatsoever, or to own their part. And to really help them understand that sometimes the emotions you're feeling come out in weird ways. They may not realize, they may think they're legitimately angry. It may not have occurred to them that really what they are is their feelings are hurt, or they're lonely, or they really would like some attention because it feels like everyone's giving the smarter kids attention, and they don't even understand why they're behaving the way they are. And it's almost like working backwards, saying, you know, I'm wondering, I see you're acting this way, and I'm trying to figure out what message, you know, behaviors are form of communication. I'm trying to figure out what feeling is underneath that, because I think that might help you really get a better handle on the behaviors. So working in both directions can help too. Sometimes you're reflecting what you see in their face or hear in their words, and sometimes you're working from their behaviors and going backwards. And it's because they can't label the feelings that the behaviors come out like that.
Good. Here's another question. What strategies work to help a child who avoids hard things? If I can get my daughter started on reading or math, usually she continues. It's getting hard to engage her at the beginning, so she can have that boost that you talk about, that dopamine boost that gets them going, and then realize success.
Yeah, you know, I don't think you want to be a Pollyanna. I think that like pretending that it's fun when it's not fun isn't going to work. So you might actually say something like, let's think about one good thing about you getting it done. And it might simply be that it's done, that you no longer have to do it because you've checked it off your list. Or I want you to, you know, what do you think will happen in a month if you just stick with it and keep practicing? Do you think it might get easier? Helping them see that one of the payoffs might be that it doesn't stay as hard forever if they can just stick with it. And then even if they can't think of anything positive about it, maybe there's something neutral that they can come up with. And doing the same when you're doing a task that you don't want to do. So it might be something like paying taxes, and you say, oh, I do not want to pay taxes. I put it off to the last minute, but at least once I do it, it's done. I don't have to think about it for another year. And so you're modeling that we as adults also have to do things we don't want to do. We're not pretending that everything is fun, but there are some rewards from doing it. One of which is it might get easier through that practice. Another is simply that it's done. Mm. And you can make it fun too. I spoke to, this was a couple of years ago for an article on creativity, spoke to a guy named Martin Reeves who wrote a book called The Imagination Machine. And he talks about turning homework into something kind of fun, especially if it's rote and boring. And one of the things that I remember him saying was that you can have them just as a break, almost like a brain break, have them repeat that math question or whatever it is over and over and over again, and get faster and faster and faster until it's total gibberish and you're laughing and it's funny. Just lightening the mood can help.
There's another question here about how you've helped her be able to understand what a middle schooler looks like. So she's asking for you once more, just sort of what can we expect, and then that'll help us when we need to find some professional help. So describe a middle schooler now.
So in other words, how do you know if you've got just a typical middle schooler versus a middle schooler who needs some extra professional help? So every middle schooler is insecure. Every middle schooler is vulnerable. Every middle schooler is going to come home and probably, if they're talking at all, because some of them just shut down, but if they're talking at all, they're probably going to only unload the worst parts of the day. And it is going to be tempting to dig for dirt or mine for misery and explore the worst parts of their day. But what they're really doing is unloading all of the stuff that they had to deal with so they can go back in and do it again the next day. I think it's Lisa D'Amore who says they're unloading the detritus of the day so that they can go back in unencumbered. It's a quote I love because it's so true. So they're all acutely aware of how well they stack up to others. They're all risk averse. In fact, the kids who have confidence are so few and far between that they tend to have a lot of social capital because everyone else is just amazed that there's this unicorn person who actually feels good about themselves and seems socially well adjusted. So all of that is normal. If they don't have any friends, if they are really weak on social skills, if you see a major change in their behaviors, their sleep, their eating, if they're asking for support, those are all reasons to be seeking out support. And sometimes, and this is something I've been sharing more lately, it's not always mental health support. And I think that's something that we want to be underscoring more, especially at a time when there's not enough mental health support. Sometimes what they need is practical support. They might need executive functioning help. They might need to have a regular lunch with a school counselor or somebody who just makes them feel seen. They might need a little bit of help, like you have a few families over, so you're giving them a social assist. Some kids benefit from working with a speech pathologist to interpret other people's words if they're having language processing issues. Could be an OT who's helping them with some of the practical stuff. But thinking a little bit more expansively, I think often with middle schoolers, when they're struggling, we go right to mental health, and there might be lower hanging fruit. It could be something very practical that we can help them with. And when we remove that and we build their confidence, the rest of it is that load feels lighter to them.
Beautiful. I have a final question for you. You and I are in the elevator, and you could just tell that I'm a middle school parent. You can just tell. I don't know what it is, but you know. And here you are, this middle school expert. What do you want to tell me in this elevator ride about being the parent of a middle schooler?
I'm going to say this. My just turned 15-year-old is in the next room, and I don't know if he can hear me or not, but I really mean this, and I say this legitimately. He's my youngest. He's a 9th grader, which means I have no more middle schoolers. And I'm really sad about that. Not that I don't want him to grow up and all of those things, but I love the phase. And what I would tell parents is it goes very quickly. It is an opportunity to really enjoy them. And rather than go to the depths with them and the heights with them and then back to the depths, if you can stay even for them and help guide them through all of those ups and downs, and have a sense of humor and enjoy their sense of humor. I'll give you another quote that I was looking at from the book that just was cracking me up because I hadn't thought about it for a while. I had a boy who came to me and he said that he wanted to go home. He was too embarrassed. He had to go home right away, immediately. And I should call his mother and he should be picked up immediately. And I said, why do you need to go home? And he said, I'll make up names, but he said, someone told Sasha I have a crush on her. And I said, they did? I said, who told her you had a crush on her? He goes, I did. I mean, that's what they are. They're this like, they're just such a fun mix of innocence and sophistication. And so I would tell that parent to try to just enjoy the ride and have fun while it lasts.
That's beautiful. I think I don't know if you saw me feverishly writing down every single word that you shared tonight, but that's how I feel when I chat with you. And I know I'm hearing Dr. Hill is telling me the very same thing. It's always a great pleasure hosting you. And this is where we go and hug our kids. So we're going to do that right now. Thank you so much, Phyllis. Good luck with the new book.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Phyllis. Appreciate
Bye-bye.
you.
Nice to meet you.
Have a great evening. Take care, everybody.